My name's Sarah, and this video is about making speech bubbles in Clip Studio Paint. This is kind of a supplement to my comic panels tutorial, but of course you don't need panels to use this feature. To start with, go to the Balloon tool. There are a bunch of options, so we'll start at the top, the Rounded Balloon subtool. Click and drag to make a balloon. You'll notice it's not a perfect oval. It creates a very rounded rectangle per the settings you see in the tool here. The outline is determined by the brush size, and by default, the colors are determined by your main and subcolors. Draw a second balloon. Notice how it connects to the first one. If it doesn't, be sure How to Add is set to Add the selected layer. Speaking of layers, the second thing to notice is there's now a new layer with a speech bubble icon. This is called a balloon layer. It's a special type of layer that can hold both balloon vectors and text. Go to the Text tool. Pick a nice comic font. CSP added Clip Studio Comic with version 3.0, but you can also find fonts online. Check out Blambot or Google Fonts for a bunch of great options, some of which are free. Change the alignment to center, then click inside a bubble. Did you catch that? Even though I clicked over here, it detected a bubble and centered my text. Typing multiple lines also centers vertically within my bubble. And if I click up here, it centers on this bubble instead. You're not locked to the center though. You can still move your text block around however you want. If you create text outside of any bubbles, it acts like normal. Go back to the Balloon tool and draw a balloon around it. The balloon appears behind the text automatically. Our outlines are kind of thin, and I'd like to rearrange things a bit. Go to the Operation tool and choose the Object subtool. Select the speech bubble and move it. If there's any text in that bubble, it stays attached, making rearranging bubbles really easy. Even though overlapping bubbles share an outline, they're still separate vector objects, so they can separate and reconnect however you want. Adjusting the size of a bubble keeps the text centered whenever possible. You can select multiple bubbles while holding down Shift, and then adjust things like their brush size. Clicking directly on the text selects it instead of the bubble. Now you can change things like the font and size, and move the text independently. If you remove text from a bubble, the bubble no longer treats it as attached. You can even move it to a different bubble if you want. Let's go back to the Balloon tool and add some tails to our balloons. There's a subtool called Balloon Tail. It's pretty cool, but it does have some curious limitations. You can't set the outline width, so when I click and drag to create one, it conforms to whichever speech bubble it's closest to, especially if they overlap. It's still good for adding quick tails though. You can set a different width for the base. The How to Bend setting has 3 options. Polyline lets you click multiple times to get a jagged effect. Double-click when you're done. Spline makes tails that curve as you add each point. Again, double-click to finish it. There's also a Thought Balloon Tail subtool, but it's not great. I prefer to just make custom thought bubble tails with the Ellipse tool. Speaking of the Ellipse tool, rounded rectangle balloons are certainly the most common, but you can make other shapes like ellipses or rectangles. Notice it's only the figure option that's different between these tools, so you can change it to make polygons too. For really custom shapes, there's the Curve Balloon subtool. Click to add points, and either finish at the first point or double-click at any time, and it'll make a whole shape. There are 4 curve types: straight line, spline, quadratic Bezier, and my favorite, cubic Bezier. If you've used other vector programs, cubic Bezier might feel familiar. Clicking once gives you a point, while clicking and dragging gives you a highly customizable curve. Not only can you use the curve balloon subtool to make the speech bubbles themselves, but as connectors for multiple balloons and custom tails too. The balloon pen is another option to draw custom balloons, connectors, and tails. It acts similar to a normal pen, but creates a filled shape when you're done. Speech balloons on the same layer merge into each other. Sometimes you want them to overlap though, and that's easy. Just put the overlapping bubbles on a separate layer. On the other hand, if you've got balloons on two separate layers but you want them to merge, select both layers, right-click, and choose Merge Selected Layers. Often you'll want to use your speech bubbles with comic panels, and there are two ways to do that. Here's the canvas I set up for my comic panels tutorial. Sometimes speech bubbles are framed by the panel border, so in that case you'll want your speech bubbles inside of the frame folder. Other times, the word balloons are allowed to float outside the panels, in which case you'd want to put the layer above your frames. One last thing. If you've downloaded Clip Studio's additional materials pack, open up the material palette by going to Window, Material, and choosing any of these options. Navigate to Manga Material, then Balloon. If it's empty, you don't have the additional materials pack. I'll show you how to get that in a second. You can use any of these pre-made bubble shapes by just dragging them onto your canvas. Once it's in, you can change and resize it with the Object subtool as usual. If you don't have the pack, you can download it from Clip Studio by clicking the gear icon, and then select Download Additional Materials Now. Just be aware it's like 2.5 gigs worth of stuff, and it takes a little while to download. You won't see the download in progress until you click Data Transfers. When it's done, be sure to close and reopen Clip Studio Paint. You'll see the balloon materials, along with a whole bunch of other new stuff. Okay, that's it for speech bubbles. I hope this helped you out. Tag me at Ms.RedNebula on socials if you make any comics with my advice. I'd love to see them. Also, a quick reminder, if you want to buy or upgrade Clip Studio Paint, use the link in the description and it'll support my channel at no additional cost to you. Until next time! A big thank you to all of my patrons, with a special shout out to Nova Tier patron Joe C. Phipps. Check out my Patreon if you'd like to help support future content like this.